Let's bring in former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. And Mr. Mayor, Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams held up two little baby shoes of a 1-year-old and talked about the latest victim of gun violence. And he called on the mayor to bring back the 1,600 man and woman force of the anti-crime unit that might have been able to prevent a shooting like this. Will he listen?
Well, first of all, Eric is absolutely right. I mean, that was one of the critical 5 or 6 drastic mistakes de Blasio made. That unit, I started that unit. It was originally called the Street Crime Unit. They're the people who straightened out Times Square for me. They're the people who straightened out Harlem and Bedford-Stuyvesant. And their expertise was taking guns from people because gun control is meaningless, right? Bad people don't control their guns. So you have to devise a strategy to do it. We devised a strategy called Stop, Question, and Frisk. Before I left office, it was held constitutional by Eric Holder and by Janet Reno. I convinced them it was constitutional. I limited it to 100,000 per year. It went all the way up to 600,000, and they started to make a lot of mistakes. I also suggest bringing back the constitutional Terry stops because you have to take the guns from them. They're not going to go sign a registration form, and they're not going to turn it in. So you have to find a legal way, and Terry versus the United States provides it. But then you got to make out all the paperwork and be very careful, which is why you have to limit it to 100,000. You can't go to 600,000, which is what destroyed it. But you got to get those guns, and you got to do it quickly. So I bring back the anti-crime unit. I sure as heck be in the Comstat room right now, and I'd be there all night trying to figure out where the hot spots are and redeploying exactly the right police officers at exactly the right time. I don't know if de Blasio stays up at night. I know he gets up very, very late in the morning. And I don't know if you would understand Comstat, but you should get someone who does. I devised it with Bill Bratton and Ed Maple, and I was there very often when we had a serial killing and would cut it down to 2 rather than 10. It's a very simple program. You just watch where the crimes are. They're obviously now very much concentrated in northern Brooklyn, and you put the right police officers there. Most of those right police officers are in the unit that he disbanded, which makes no sense. He's also got to, he has to support the police. They don't trust him. They haven't trusted him since the assassinations of the 2 officers in Brooklyn when he called the police department racist, and the guy came all the way from Baltimore and killed a New York City policeman. So they don't trust him. He's got to get their trust back. He has to tell them, look, I know you have to make tough decisions. I'll support you if you're right. I'm not just going to turn you over to the wolves. If you do something like what happened in Minneapolis, I'm going to see you go to jail for the rest of your
Rudy,
life.
You know, so, you know, and the police themselves turned their back famously on Mayor de Blasio a couple of times. But what's interesting is rather than calling out more police, what the mayor just called for in that soundbite run by Kayla Mamalak, our reporter, he said, bring the community out to take back the community. And
well, in other words, shot.
Well, that's an idea, but at the same time,
get shot.
Rudy, hold on a second. At the same time, you've got this story that has captivated the nation about this little 1-year-old baby in the stroller who was shot. And the father and the grandmother were on our air in the last 36 hours talking about how the community will not reveal who was involved in this. Here they are talking about that little boy who lost his life. Hold on just a second, Rudy. Listen to this.
I know.
He took my son's life. I can't get that back. I can't hold him no more. I can't hear him calling me daddy no more. I can't kiss him no more. I can't play with him no more. I can't do nothing with him no more. Like, I gotta put my son in the ground now. And he's only 1. His birthday 2 months. In 2 months, he didn't live to see 2. Like, he didn't live life. And it's like I wanted to get him out this violence before something like this happened.
For the cowards that did this, you should be ashamed of yourself, because everybody talk about Black Lives Matter. What about baby lives?
And Mayor, the family said, look, we would like people who know who the shooters were to come forward, but they haven't heard anything. Now you can go, Rudy.
Well, Samantha Gardner made one of the most eloquent statements about that Marxist terrorist organization, Black Lives Matter. They don't care about black lives. Davil Gardner, they don't care about. There's no demonstration for him or for the 9,000 other black men that were killed, not by the police last year, or the ones that are getting killed 20 per week in New York now. They don't care about them. They only care about black lives that can be exploited. And they try to turn the community against the police. And the minute the community loses the police, then the bad guys take over. So there needs to be a restructuring here. The mayor's got to go into the communities and say, the police are not your enemy. They're your friends. He's got to stop demeaning them. He has to stop saying things that they're racist and that his son is afraid of them. Sure, his son should be afraid of the police, but he also should be afraid of the more likely way in which his son will get killed, which is by another black man. I mean, that happens 9,000 times a year. The police thing happens about 9 times a year. So if you're a responsible dad and you care about your son, you say, son, be careful with the police. But I tell you what, 1,000 times more, be careful with the other kids in the street, because there's about 1,000 times more chance they're going to kill you than a cop. Mm-hmm. When you say that to a kid, you're giving him political correctness. You're not giving him honest advice for the good of the kid. And I went into those communities not to harass black people, but to save their lives. And I saved more black lives than any mayor in the history of the city. So I think I know what I'm talking about. And I could turn this around in a month. 1 month, if you let me bring back the cops that I want and the programs that I want, all of which have been held constitutional by the Clinton Justice Department.
Rudy, you know, Bill de Blasio is likely not going to do any of what you suggested. He's too busy painting Black Lives Matter murals outside of Trump Tower for political purposes. That's how he's spending his time, unfortunately. But there's another story that we've been following very closely amid so much of what's going on with anti-police rhetoric around the country. You see a Bronx district attorney who has yet to file charges against a suspect that was shown in a video putting an NYPD officer in a headlock. What kind of message does this send that no charges have been filed, suspect released? What are they doing?
Well, having been a prosecutor for most of my life and very proud of it, I have to tell you, they've done a good job of infiltrating district attorneys' offices without our noticing enough. George Soros, going back to about 2016, has invested something like $30 or $40 million in local DA's races, and he's electing people who aren't qualified to be prosecutors, people who I regard as criminally friendly, police-hating lawyers. That's their whole background. For example, the prosecutor in St. Louis who wants to prosecute that couple who appear to be defending their lives, she got more money from Soros than anyone else, and is one of Soros's top picks.
Wow.
The one in Contra Costa, California, who wants to prosecute for a hate crime, the people who are trying to cover over the Black Lives Matter, hate crime seems a little excessive. She's another Soros-planted DA. In Philadelphia, he has a DA that doesn't take property crimes. The police are going crazy. And so is property crime. They've gone to #1 in the country. And he had one in San Francisco that did the same thing. They threw him out.
He's putting over $200 million, he says,
George
into racial
Soros
justice content.
Has deliberately invaded our criminal justice system to destroy it.
I hear you.
Part of destroying our government.
We're going to cover that at a different time. Meanwhile, we reached out to the Bronx DA's office for comment about the story we just told you about. Have not heard back. Rudy Giuliani, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, and keep watching my city, please.
Right.
It's a tragedy.
And we hear you on WABC. Just real quick, would you ever run again for mayor?
No, Brian. You really shouldn't go back.
Okay.
I got to do something. I mean, I put so much of my life into changing it, and I was so proud of it. I was proud of it because of all the lives that we saved. And also, I think about the lives I lost doing it. It wasn't mine. It was the cops. 26 of them before September 11 died trying to protect lives of black people.
Mr. Mayor, we'll see you again soon.
Because they love them.
Yep.